They say some families are haunted by their past. Mine is drowning in it. My name is Eleanor Whitworth, and I'm 28 years old. 3 weeks ago I stood in the rain at my father's funeral and watched them lower him into the ground next to my mother, my uncle, and my grandfather, all dead before 40. The minister spoke about God's plan, but I wasn't listening. I was counting the graves, counting the years, counting the days I might have left. Because there's something you need to understand about the Whitworth family. We don't grow old. We don't retire to beach houses or spoil our grandchildren. We die young, and we die screaming. For 200 years, every firstborn Whitworth has met the same fate, consumed by a madness that starts with nightmares and ends with blood. My great-great-grandfather threw himself from a bridge. My grandfather walked into the woods and was never seen alive again. My father locked himself in his study 3 months ago, and when we finally broke down the door, the walls were covered in symbols I didn't recognize and warnings I couldn't understand. The doctors called it psychosis. The family called it inevitable. I called it a mystery I was going to solve even if it killed me. Because I'm a firstborn Whitworth. And according to every entry in my father's journal, the one I found hidden beneath the floorboards, pages filled with desperate research and my name underlined in red ink, I have less than 2 years before it begins. 2 years to break a curse that has never been broken. 2 years to save myself, or become another name carved in stone. This is my story. Stay with me until the end, because what I discovered in those 2 years didn't just change my life. It changed everything I thought I knew about family, sacrifice, and the terrible price of survival, the weight of inheritance. The house smelled like death and old paper. I stood in the doorway of my father's study, the same room where they'd found him, and tried to steady my breathing. The wallpaper had been replaced, soft beige covering whatever he'd written in his final hours, but I could still see the outline of words bleeding through like ghosts refusing to stay buried. The cleaning service had done their best, but there are some stains that go deeper than paint. My Aunt Margaret appeared behind me, her hand light on my shoulder. She was 56 and gray-haired, a living anomaly in our family tree. A second-born child, she'd watched her older brother, my father, descend into the same madness that had claimed their father before him. "You don't have to do this today, Ellie," she said softly. "Yes, I do." I stepped into the room. I need to understand what he was trying to tell me. She didn't argue. Margaret knew better than anyone that the Whitworth curse wasn't something you could run from. She'd spent her entire life watching firstborns fall like dominoes, powerless to stop it, bearing the secondary curse of survival, the burden of burying everyone you love. The study was exactly as I remembered from childhood, back when my father was still my father, and not the hollow-eyed stranger he'd become. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with medical journals, history books, and what looked like every text ever written on psychology, neurology, and genetics. My father had been a psychiatrist, brilliant and methodical, convinced that the family curse was nothing more than inherited mental illness waiting to be diagnosed and treated. He'd been wrong. I walked to his desk, running my fingers over the worn leather surface. This was where he'd spent his final months, barely eating, barely sleeping, filling notebook after notebook with research that became increasingly frantic and illegible. The police had taken most of it as evidence. Evidence of what? I wasn't sure, since there was no crime to solve. A man goes mad and dies. In my family, that's called Tuesday. But they'd missed the journal. I pulled it from my bag now, the leather cover soft and warm like living skin. I'd read it cover to cover a dozen times since finding it, and each reading revealed new layers of my father's desperation. He'd started keeping it the day I was born, the day he'd looked at his firstborn child and seen not just a daughter but a death sentence. Eleanor Margaret Whitworth, born October 3, 1997, at 3:47 a.m. 8 pounds, 6 ounces. Perfect in every way. I held her in my arms and felt my heart break. My beautiful girl, my doomed girl. I will not let this curse take her. I swear it on my life. I will break this or I will die trying. He'd done both. I opened the journal to the page I'd marked, dated just 2 weeks before his death. His handwriting had deteriorated into barely controlled scrawl. It's not genetic, not psychological. I've tested everything, consulted everyone. The pattern is too precise, too deliberate. 26 years old, that's when it starts. Always 26 for the firstborn. The dreams come first, then the visions, then the voice. God help me, I can hear it now, Eleanor. It knows your name. It's been waiting for you since before you were born. I found something. In the old records from Whitworth Manor in England, a transaction dated 1823. Our ancestor, Thomas Whitworth, made an agreement. I can't find the details, but there's a reference to blood payment for prosperity eternal. The family fortune, our success, our health, it all started with Thomas. And so did the curse. The firstborn pays, every generation. The family thrives and we die. There's a way to break it. There has to be. The answer is in Whitworth Manor, in the place where it began. Go there, Eleanor. If you're reading this, I've failed, but you still have time. Go to England, find the truth, end this. The entry stopped there, the ink trailing off as if he'd been interrupted, or as if he'd finally lost the ability to hold the pen. I closed the journal, pressing it against my chest. 2 weeks after writing those words, my father had locked himself in this room and painted the walls with symbols that looked like they'd been pulled from nightmares. The police photos were in my bag too. I'd requested copies, needed to see what he'd seen, understand what he'd been trying to communicate in those final moments. The symbols meant nothing to me. Not yet. But Whitworth Manor might. I'm going to England, I said, turning to find Margaret still in the doorway watching me with eyes full of sorrow. She didn't look surprised. Your father said you would. You knew about the journal? I knew he was looking for answers. I knew he thought he could save you. Her voice cracked. I knew he was running out of time. I walked to her, taking her hands in mine. They were cold, trembling. I have to try, Aunt Margaret. I'm 28. I have less than 2 years before. Don't, she whispered. Don't say it out loud. But we both knew. 26 was when it started. My 26th birthday had passed 18 months ago, and so far I'd been lucky. No dreams, no visions, no voice whispering my name in the dark. But the journal entries from other Whitworths, the accounts Margaret had shared, the medical records my father had compiled, they all told the same story. It would start, and once it started, there was no stopping it, unless I could break the curse. Come with me, I said suddenly. Help me find the truth. Margaret pulled away, shaking her head. I can't go back there. That house, Ellie, you don't understand what that place is. Your father went there once, when he was your age, looking for the same answers. He came back changed. Said he'd seen things, felt things. He never spoke about it again, but I knew. Whatever is in that manor, it's not just history, it's alive. All the more reason not to go alone. You won't be alone. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Before your father died, he made arrangements. There's a historian in London, Dr. James Ashford. He specializes in aristocratic family histories, particularly ones involving, she hesitated, unusual circumstances. Your father contacted him months ago. Dr. Ashford has been researching the Whitworth family. He knows you're coming. I took the paper, unfolding it to find a name, address, and email. Did my father trust him? Your father trusted no one by the end, but he believed Dr. Ashford could help. That's as close to trust as he got. I nodded, folding the paper and tucking it into the journal. I'll leave next week. I need to arrange time off work, book flights. I already did. Margaret's smile was sad. I knew you'd go the moment you found that journal. Your tickets are booked for Monday. You have a month's leave approved from the hospital. She worked in hospital administration and had called in favors I probably didn't want to know about. I also transferred some money into your account. Your father left you everything, but the estate is still in probate. This should cover your expenses until then. I felt tears burning my eyes. You've been planning this. Someone had to. You're so much like him, Ellie. Brilliant, stubborn, determined to save everyone even if it means destroying yourself. She cupped my face in her hands. Promise me something. Promise me that if it gets too dangerous, if you feel it starting, the dreams, the voice, you'll come home. You'll let me be with you at the end. There won't be an end. I'm going to break this. Promise me anyway. I looked into her eyes and saw every loss she'd endured, every funeral she'd attended, every firstborn she'd loved and buried. I promise. She pulled me into a hug and we stood there in my father's study, surrounded by the evidence of his failed attempt to save me. Both of us pretending that this time would be different, that I would be different, that the Whitworth curse could be broken. Why determination and desperation alone. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. I packed light, clothes for a month, my laptop, recording equipment for documenting whatever I found. I copied every page of my father's journal, storing the digital files in 3 separate cloud accounts. I printed the police photos of his final writings and spent hours trying to decipher the symbols, searching online databases of occult imagery and historical texts. Nothing matched exactly, but there were similarities. Celtic knots, alchemical symbols, something that looked like medieval Latin but wasn't quite right. My father had been trying to communicate something specific, something he'd discovered in his research, but his mind had been fragmenting even as he wrote. I found myself wondering what it felt like. The madness. Did it come slowly, like water rising, or all at once like a wave? Did you know you were losing yourself, or did the curse convince you that everyone else was wrong? My father had been a rational man, a scientist. If the madness could take him, what chance did I have? On Sunday night, I drove to the cemetery. The Whitworth family plot sat on a hill overlooking the city. 23 graves arranged in chronological order like a timeline of tragedy. I walked past them all, reading names and dates I'd memorized as a child. Thomas Whitworth Jr., 1823 to 1849, 26 years old. Jonathan Whitworth, 1847 to 1873, 26 years old. William Whitworth, 26 years old, all dying in their 20s or early 30s. The longest anyone had lasted was 34. The shortest was 26 years and 3 months. My father's grave was still fresh, the grass not yet grown over the disturbed earth. I sat beside it, pulling my knees to my chest. "I'm going, Dad," I said to the headstone. "I'm going to finish what you started. I'm going to find out what Thomas did, what he agreed to, and I'm going to end it. For both of us." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees, and for a moment I could have sworn I heard my father's voice, "Run! Run, Eleanor, don't go back there." But when I turned, there was nothing but shadows and silence. I stayed until the cemetery closed, saying goodbye to the father I'd lost long before he died, the father who'd loved me enough to sacrifice his sanity trying to save me. Then I went home, finished packing, and tried to sleep. The dream started that night, a tree in a corridor I'd never seen before, but somehow knew intimately. Dark wood paneling, portraits lining the walls, Whitworth ancestors staring down with hollow eyes. At the end of the corridor stood a door, and I knew with absolute certainty that I shouldn't open it. I walked toward it anyway, my feet moving without my permission, drawn forward by something I couldn't name. The portraits watched me pass. Their eyes followed. Their mouths moved, whispering words I couldn't quite hear. When I reached the door, I found it already open. Inside was a study. My father's study, but wrong. The books were older, the furniture antique, and sitting at the desk was a man I'd only seen in family paintings. Thomas Whitworth. He looked up at me, his face gaunt and lined with suffering, and smiled. "Hello, Eleanor. I've been waiting for you." I tried to speak, to ask him what he'd done, what agreement he'd made, but no sound came out. My voice was gone. Thomas stood, walking toward me with slow, deliberate steps. "You look like her," he said. "Like Elizabeth. My daughter, the first payment." He reached out, and his hand passed through my chest, cold as death, gripping something inside me. I felt it then. A connection, a thread stretching back through generations, binding me to every firstborn Whitworth who'd come before. I felt their terror, their madness, their final moments all at once. "The price must be paid," Thomas whispered. "The blood debt must be honored. Unless—" He leaned closer, his lips brushing my ear. "Unless you can find the contract and burn it before the madness takes you. Before you become like me. Like your father. Like all of us." His hand released my heart, and I gasped, stumbling backward. The study was dissolving around me, walls turning transparent, and beyond them I could see Whitworth Manor, a massive estate shrouded in mist, windows dark like empty eyes, waiting. "Hurry, Eleanor," Thomas said as he faded. "You have less time than you think. The dreams have started. The curse knows you're coming." I woke up screaming. My apartment was silent. The clock showed 3:47 a.m., the exact time I'd been born. I was covered in sweat, my heart racing, and I could still feel Thomas's hand inside my chest, cold and invasive and wrong. The dreams have started. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and pulled up my flight information. 15 hours until departure. I needed to call Dr. Ashford, warn him I was coming sooner than expected, tell him about the dream, but when I opened my email there was already a message waiting, sent 20 minutes ago. Miss Whitworth, I regret to inform you that I cannot meet you in London as planned. My research into your family history has uncovered something deeply troubling. I urge you not to come to England. Do not go to Whitworth Manor. Some curses are meant to remain unbroken. The price of breaking them is higher than death. Please, for your own sake, stay away. Dr. James Ashford. I read the email 3 times, then checked the timestamp again. He'd sent it at 3:27 a.m. London time. Right around when my dream started. Right around when Thomas Whitworth had appeared to me. I should have been terrified. Should have listened to the warnings, cancelled my flight, accepted my fate. Instead, I felt something else, determination. Whatever was waiting for me at Whitworth Manor, whatever my ancestor had done, it was connected to me now. The curse had reached across generations to show me Thomas, to warn me, or lure me, to that estate. And Dr. Ashford's sudden refusal to help, his warning to stay away, only confirmed what my father had suspected. The answer was there. In that house. In whatever Thomas Whitworth had hidden. I typed a reply. Dr. Ashford, thank you for your concern, but I'm coming anyway. My father spent his life researching this curse, and it killed him. I won't let his death be meaningless. I'll be in London tomorrow evening. If you won't meet me, then I'll find the manor on my own, but I'd rather have your help. Please reconsider. Eleanor Whitworth. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I got out of bed, made coffee even though I knew I wouldn't sleep again, and spent the remaining hours before dawn reviewing everything I knew about Thomas Whitworth. Born 1797. Inherited the Whitworth estate at 23 when his father died in a riding accident. Married Elizabeth Hartley in 1819. Had 3 children, Elizabeth, 1820, Thomas Jr., 1823, and Margaret, 1825. In 1823, according to my father's research, something changed. The Whitworth fortune, which had been modest, suddenly exploded. Thomas made a series of impossibly successful investments. The family went from comfortable to wealthy in less than a year. That same year, his daughter Elizabeth, 4 years old, drowned in the estate's pond. An accident, the record said. But my father had found Elizabeth's death certificate and made a note, the first payment. 3 years later, on his 26th birthday, Thomas Jr. began exhibiting signs of madness. He was institutionalized 2 months later. Dead within the year. The pattern had started, and it had never stopped. I stared at Thomas Whitworth's portrait on my laptop screen, a formal painting done around 1825 after his fortune had been made. He looked proud, successful, the perfect gentleman. But there was something in his eyes, a shadow that the artist had captured perhaps unknowingly, that looked like guilt or fear. "What did you do?" I whispered to the image. "What was worth your children's lives?" The portrait didn't answer, but somewhere in Whitworth Manor, I knew the truth was waiting. I just had to survive long enough to find it. The manor's secrets. The flight to London was turbulent, or maybe that was just me. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop replaying the dream in my head. Thomas's cold hand in my chest, his whispered warning about the contract, Dr. Ashford's sudden reversa. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the corridor. The portraits with their moving mouths. The door I shouldn't open. By the time we landed at Heathrow, I'd convinced myself 3 separate times to turn around and go home, and 3 separate times I'd remembered my father's journal entry, go to England, find the truth, end this. I owed him that much. Dr. Ashford hadn't responded to my email, so I took a cab directly to his office address in Westminster. The building was old, brick and ivy, squeezed between a solicitor's office and a rare bookshop. A brass plaque beside the door read, "Ashford Historical Research, by appointment only." I rang the bell anyway. No answer. I rang again, holding it longer this time, and finally heard movement inside. Footsteps, slow and hesitant. The door cracked open and a man peered out, mid-50s, gray beard, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Miss Whitworth," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I told you not to come." "I know. I came anyway." I pushed past him into a cluttered office filled with books, manuscripts, and what looked like genealogical charts covering every available wall surface. "We need to talk about my family." Dr. Ashford closed the door, leaning against it like he needed the support. He looked exhausted, haunted even, and I recognized the expression. I'd seen it on my father's face for months before he died. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said. "Your family's curse isn't folklore or genetic illness. It's real, and it's connected to something much older and darker than you realize." "Then help me understand. My father paid you to research the Whitworths. What did you find?" He hesitated, then walked to his desk, pulling out a thick folder. "Sit down. This will take some time." I sat. Dr. Ashford opened the folder, spreading documents across the desk, old letters, ledgers, maps, and what looked like pages from a medieval manuscript. "Your ancestor, Thomas Whitworth, was desperate in 1823. The estate was failing, debts mounting, his wife pregnant with their third child. He was facing ruin. So he made a deal," I said, "for prosperity. My father found a reference to blood payment. Your father found the beginning. I found the end." Dr. Ashford pulled out a letter yellowed with age, written in elegant script. "This is from Thomas Whitworth's personal correspondence, dated December 1823. It was never sent. I found it hidden in a book that was part of the Manor's library, sold off in 1952. He slid it across to me. I read, "My dearest Margaret, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the truth dies with me. I cannot bring myself to burden you with what I have done, yet I cannot let you remain ignorant should the worst come to pass. I have made an arrangement with an antiquarian who came to the manor last month. He called himself Mr. Gray, though I suspect that was not his true name. He had knowledge of things that should not exist, artifacts that predated Christianity, contracts written in languages that hurt to read. He offered me salvation from our debts, prosperity beyond measure, health and success for the Whitworth name. The price, he said, was simple: blood, not mine, never mine, but the blood of my line, firstborn of each generation, offered to the old powers that still linger in England's forgotten places." I was weak, Margaret, terrified, thinking of you and our children starving, losing everything. So I agreed. I signed his contract in my blood, and witnessed it signed in blood far older than mine. The power came immediately. My investments succeeded beyond reason. Our debts vanished. But 3 weeks later, Elizabeth drowned, my beautiful daughter. And I knew, God help me, I knew it was the first payment. I tried to break the contract. I searched for Mr. Gray, but he had vanished. I consulted priests, scholars, anyone who might know of such things. They all said the same. Contracts with the old powers cannot be broken. The debt must be paid until the end of the bloodline, or until— There the letter ends, Dr. Ashford said. The page is torn. Whatever Thomas was about to write, he either never finished or destroyed it. Or until what? I demanded. There has to be more. You said you found the end. Dr. Ashford's hands shook as he pulled out another document, this one modern, a printout from what looked like a database. I traced every transaction, every movement of the Whitworth fortune from 1823 to present day. The prosperity isn't random, it's mathematical, precise. For every firstborn who dies, the family gains exactly 26 years of success, 26 years of perfect health, profitable investments, no major setbacks. He showed me graphs, financial charts that made the pattern undeniable. Your family's wealth isn't inherited luck. It's payment for sacrifice. And it's still active, still collecting. I felt cold spreading through my chest. The contract is still in effect. More than that. Dr. Ashford pulled out a photograph of a symbol, hand-drawn in CK ink. Does this look familiar? It did. It was one of the symbols my father had painted on his study walls. Where did you get this? From the original contract. Dr. Ashford's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I found it 3 days ago, in Whitworth Manor. Everything stopped. You went to the manor. against every instinct screaming at me not to. But I needed confirmation, and the current owner, a distant Whitworth cousin who inherited when the main line died out in the 1950s, gave me access to the archives. The contract is there, Miss Whitworth, hidden in a sealed room beneath the study, the same room where Thomas Whitworth made his agreement with Mr. Gray. Show me, I said immediately. Take me there. Absolutely not. Dr. Ashford backed away. The moment I entered that room, I felt it. The contract is alive somehow, aware. It knew I was researching your family. It showed me things. Visions of every firstborn's death, their final moments, their madness. I barely made it out. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing bruises that looked like fingerprints circling his wrist. Something grabbed me as I left. Something that didn't want me taking this information out of the manor. I've had nightmares every night since. The same corridor you described in your email. The same portraits, the same voice calling my name. My email. I'd never described the corridor to him. How do you know about my dream? Dr. Ashford's face went pale. Because it's the same dream. The curse showed it to both of us. It's guiding you to the manor, Miss Whitworth. It wants you there. Then that's where I need to be. I stood, grabbing the papers. If the contract is there, if that's where it all started, that's where I can end it. You don't understand. Ending it might not save you. The letter was torn, but I found one more thing. He pulled out a final document, this one a page from what looked like a medieval grimoire, translated to English. Contracts with the old powers require balance. If you break the agreement, the debt doesn't vanish. It transfers. Someone pays. I read the passage he pointed to. Breaking of blood contracts requires blood of equal measure. The prosperity gained must be returned, the protection withdrawn, the debt settled in full. The one who breaks the seal becomes the final payment, their life offered in place of all who came before. You mean if I destroy the contract, I die anyway? More than die. You become the sacrifice that pays for 200 years of your family's success. Every benefit, every advantage, every moment of health and wealth, it all gets extracted from you at once. Dr. Ashford's eyes were pleading. Your father must have discovered this. Maybe that's what drove him mad, knowing that saving you meant damning you to an even worse fate. I sat back down, the papers scattering from my hands. All those deaths, all those firstborns consumed by madness. And the alternative was to let them continue, or to destroy myself saving a family that might not even deserve to be saved. There has to be another way, I said. Thomas started to write something, or until what? I don't know. I've searched everywhere, consulted every text on historical contracts and blood magic. If there's another option, I can't find it. I thought about my father's final words, the symbols he'd painted, the desperation. In his journal, he'd been trying to tell me something, trying to give me the answer, and then it hit me. The symbols, I said, gathering the photos of my father's study walls. They're not random. Look. He painted them in sequence, moving around the room. It's a pattern. Dr. Ashford leaned in, examining them. My God, it's a reversal spell. He was trying to show you how to unmake the contract without triggering the final payment clause. We spread out all the photos, arranging them in order. My father had covered every wall, and when viewed correctly, the symbols formed a kind of map, or maybe a ritual, instructions written in desperation by a mind teetering on the edge of madness. He figured it out, I breathed. Before he died, he figured out how to break it safely. Or he thought he did. Dr. Ashford's skepticism was heavy. Miss Whitworth, your father wasn't well at the end. The curse was taking him. These could be the ravings of a broken mind, not actual instructions. Or they could be both. I gathered the photos carefully, protectively. Either way, I have to try. Where exactly is this sealed room? Dr. Ashford studied me for a long moment, and I saw the internal struggle playing across his face, the historian's curiosity warring with basic human compassion. Finally, he sighed. If I tell you, will you at least wait until morning? Get some rest, approach this with a clear head? I've been approaching this with a clear head for 28 years. Time's up, Dr. Ashford. Where is the room? He walked to a map of Whitworth Manor pinned to his wall, pointing to a spot on the ground floor. The old study, beneath the main library. There's a hidden door in the bookshelf. Fourth shelf from the left, pull the copy of Paradise Lost. The stairs lead down to what was originally a priest's hole, used during the Reformation. Thomas Whitworth converted it into his private sanctum, and the current owner will just let me waltz in? The current owner is 78 and spends most of his time in London. The manor is essentially abandoned, maintained by a skeleton staff. I have keys. He gave them to me for my research. Dr. Ashford pulled a keyring from his desk drawer, holding it like it might bite him. I can't go back there. But if you're determined to do this, at least take the keys. At least be able to get in legally. I took them. They were cold, heavier than they should be. The manor is 3 hours north by car, Dr. Ashford continued. I can arrange a rental, GPS coordinates. I'll take the train, I said. First thing tomorrow morning. Can you send me everything you have on the contract? Photos, translations, anything that might help? Already done. Check your email. He walked me to the door, and I could see the relief in his eyes that I was leaving, that he wouldn't have to be responsible for whatever came next. Miss Whitworth, Eleanor, please reconsider. If your father's reversal spell works, wonderful, but if it doesn't, if it triggers the final payment, you won't just die. You'll be erased. Every good thing your family ever experienced will be extracted from you. My family's good fortune was built on the death of children, I said quietly. Maybe it deserves to be erased. I left before he could argue, stepping out into London's grey afternoon, clutching keys to a cursed manor and photos of my dead father's last attempt to save me. I found a hotel near King's Cross Station and spent the night reviewing everything Dr. Ashford had sent. The translated passages from the contract made my skin crawl. Thomas Whitworth, in sound mind and desperate circumstance, does hereby pledge the blood of his firstborn line to the old powers residing in the land of his inheritance. In exchange for prosperity, health, and success unending, the firstborn of each generation shall be claimed in their 26th year, their life force returned to the earth from whence all power flows. There was more, pages of legal language that somehow predated modern English, binding the Whitworth family to an agreement that couldn't be broken by death, migration, or even the ending of the bloodline. As long as one Whitworth descended from Thomas remained alive, the contract held power. As long as I remained alive. The reversal spell my father had created was complex, requiring specific symbols drawn in specific order, words spoken in a language that looked like Latin but wasn't. I copied it all carefully into a new notebook, practicing the pronunciations, memorizing the sequence. If this worked, I'd break the curse. If it didn't, I'd become the final payment, every ounce of Whitworth prosperity extracted from my flesh in some unimaginable way. Either option was better than madness. I tried to sleep around midnight, but the dreams came again. This time I was in the sealed room watching Thomas Whitworth sign the contract. Mr. Gray stood beside him, tall, impossibly thin, with eyes that were too old and a smile that held too many teeth. "The girl will come," Mr. Gray said, looking directly at me, even though this was 200 years in the past. "The last firstborn. She'll try to break our agreement." "Can she?" Thomas asked, his voice hollow. "That depends on whether she values her own life more than the truth." Mr. Gray's smile widened. "Most choose survival, but every generation there's one who chooses defiance." He touched the contract, and I felt that cold hand inside my chest again. "Let's see what Eleanor Whitworth chooses." I woke at dawn, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. The dreams were getting stronger. The curse knew I was coming. Good. Let it know. Let it prepare. Because I wasn't running anymore. I packed quickly, checked out of the hotel, and caught the first train north. 3 hours through England's countryside, watching the landscape shift from urban sprawl to rolling hills to something darker, wilder. The GPS coordinates Dr. Ashford had sent led to a small village called Whitworth Cross, named after my family, naturally. From there, I hired a car to take me the final 5 miles to the manor. The driver, an elderly man named Tom, gave me a strange look when I told him the destination. "Whitworth Manor? Don't get many visitors up there. Place has a reputation." "What kind of reputation?" "The haunted kind." He pulled onto a narrow road lined with ancient trees. "Locals don't go near it after dark. Stories of lights in the windows, voices in the woods, people who went to the manor and came back. Different." "Wrong." "Different how?" Tom shrugged. "Hard to explain. It's like the house gets into you, changes something inside. Last bloke who went up there for maintenance came back speaking in tongues, had to be hospitalized. Before that, a historian fellow, might have been your Dr. Ashford, barely made it out, white as a sheet and shaking like a leaf. But people do make it out. Most times, not always. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You family? Unfortunately. Ah. Tom nodded like that explained everything. Then I expect you know what you're walking into. Your people have owned that land for 200 years, and not a single generation's ended well. You're the last of them, aren't you? Last Whitworth? How did you? Small village. We keep track of these things. When the old man dies, that, Cornelius, the current owner, second cousin twice removed or some such, the manor reverts to the National Trust. End of an era. He pulled up a long, winding driveway, and through the trees I caught my first glimpse of Whitworth Manor. It was massive. Tudor architecture, dark stone, windows like empty eyes staring down. Ivy covered half the walls, and parts of the roof had clearly seen better days. It looked abandoned, forgotten, and absolutely malevolent. It looked like home, and that terrified me more than anything. Tom stopped at the front entrance, refusing to drive any closer. This is as far as I go. You need picking up, call this number. He handed me a card. But do yourself a favor, miss. Don't stay past dark. Whatever's in that house, it's stronger at night. I paid him, grabbed my bag, and watched him drive away far faster than necessary. Then I turned to face Whitworth Manor. The keys felt warm now in my pocket. The air smelled of rain and decay. And somewhere deep inside that house, in a sealed room beneath the study, a contract waited that had consumed my family for 200 years. I walked to the front door, chose the largest key, and slid it into the lock. It turned easily, like it had been waiting for me. The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing an entrance hall filled with dust and shadows. Portraits lined the walls, generations of Whitworths staring down with hollow eyes. I recognized Thomas immediately. Same painting as I'd seen online, but larger, more detailed. And in person, I could see what the reproduction had hidden. Behind him, barely visible in the painted shadows, was a figure. Tall, thin, too many teeth. Mr. Gray. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me with a sound like a coffin lid. Hello, Eleanor, a voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. We've been waiting. The manor was a labyrinth. Rooms connected to rooms, hallways twisted back on themselves, and everywhere I looked, portraits watched. Whitworth ancestors, every one of them. I could trace the family resemblance, see my own features echoed in faces that had been dead for centuries. Every firstborn had a black ribbon painted across their portrait frame. Every second born was unmarked. I counted as I walked, 23 black ribbons, 23 firstborns claimed by the curse, and soon there would be 24, unless I stopped it. I found the library on the second floor, exactly where Dr. Ashford's map indicated. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive fireplace, furniture covered in sheets. The smell of old paper and mildew was overwhelming. Fourth shelf from the left. Copy of Paradise Lost. I found it easily, a leather-bound edition that looked original from the 1600s. Worth a fortune. I pulled it and heard a click. K. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated the black. The stairs were steep, narrow, claustrophobic. As I descended, the temperature dropped, my breath misting in air that hadn't been disturbed in decades. At the bottom was a door. Iron-bound oak, covered in symbols I recognized from my father's photographs. This was it. The sealed room, the place where Thomas Whitworth had damned his family. The place where I would save it, or die trying. I pulled out the keys, trying each one until I found the match. The lock resisted, grinding, and for a moment I thought it wouldn't open. Then it gave way with a sound like breaking bones. The room beyond was small, circular, lit by a strange phosphorescence that seemed to come from the walls themselves. In the center stood a stone altar, and on it, under glass, was the contract. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run. The document was written on something that wasn't paper or parchment. It looked like skin, though I tried not to think about that too hard. The writing was crimson, faded, but still legible. And at the bottom were two signatures, Thomas Whitworth in shaky human handwriting, and something else, a symbol that hurt to look at directly, that seemed to shift and writhe even under the glass. Mr. Gray's mark. I set down my bag, pulling out my notebook, the photos of my father's symbols, everything I'd need for the reversal spell. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was solid. 200 years of death ended tonight. I began drawing the symbols on the floor around the altar, using chalk I'd brought specifically for T. His purpose. The patterns had to be exact, precise, each one connecting to the next in a web of protection and reversal. As I worked, I felt the room watching. The air grew colder. The phosphorescent light dimmed. "You cannot break what was freely given," a voice said, the same voice from my dreams, from the entry hall, but stronger now. Closer. I kept drawing. Thomas didn't know what he was agreeing to. The contract is void. He knew enough. He chose prosperity over his children. That choice cannot be unmade. Then I'll unmake it for him. I completed the final symbol, stepping into the center of the pattern. From my notebook, I began reading the reversal spell, pronouncing each syllable carefully. Per sanguinem datum, per sanguinem reversum. The room shook. The glass over the contract cracked. "Stop," the voice commanded, and I felt pressure building in my skull, like something trying to force its way inside my mind. "You don't understand what you're doing. The reversal will destroy you. Per dolorem acceptum, per dolorem redendum." I kept reading, even as the pressure increased, even as my vision started to blur. The contract burst into flames, not normal fire. This was black, consuming, and as it burned, I felt something rip inside me. Like a thread connecting me to every Whitworth who'd come before was being severed, and each severance took a piece of me with it. I screamed but didn't stop. Per vitam datum, per mortem fugiendam. The room exploded with light. I was thrown backward, hitting the wall hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. When I could see again, the contract was ash. The altar was empty, and standing in front of me was Mr. Gray. He looked exactly as he had in the painting, in my dreams. Impossibly tall, impossibly thin, eyes ancient and hungry. "Impressive," he said, his voice silk over razors. "Your father got halfway through before the madness took him. You actually completed it." "It's done," I gasped, struggling to stand. "The contract is broken. The curse is ended. Is it?" Mr. Gray tilted his head, amused. "Did you read the entire spell, Eleanor, or just the parts your father wrote down?" Ice flooded my veins. "What? The reversal requires balance. The debt must be paid. And your father, clever man, left out the final price." Mr. Gray knelt beside me, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. To break the contract, the one who breaks it must take the place of all who were claimed. 23 firstborns, 23 lives. All that death, all that madness, all that suffering, it has to go somewhere. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not. You freed your family, Eleanor Whitworth. Congratulations. They'll live long, happy lives now. The curse is lifted." His smile was terrible. "And you'll burn for all of them." I felt it then, the transfer beginning. 23 lifetimes of madness, of terror, of violent death, all flowing into me at once. I screamed again, but this time it didn't stop. Mr. Gray stood, brushing ash from his coat. "Your father tried to save you by finding a loophole, a way to break the curse without the final payment. But there is no loophole. There is only the debt, and you just volunteered to pay it all." He walked toward the stairs, pausing at the threshold. "I'll leave you to it. The madness should take about 3 days. After that, well, you'll join our ancestors as another tragic Whitworth death. But at least your family will be free." He vanished into the shadows, and I was alone. Alone with 23 voices screaming in my head. Alone with the weight of 200 years of curse crushing down on my mind. Alone with the knowledge that I'd saved my family by destroying myself. I don't remember crawling up the stairs. Don't remember making it out of the manor, stumbling into the woods. The next thing I knew, I was lying in wet grass, staring up at a gray sky, and the sun was setting. 3 days, Mr. Gray had said. 3 days until the madness consumed me completely. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called the only person who would understand. "Aunt Margaret," I sobbed when she answered. "I broke it. I broke the curse. Oh, Ellie." Her voice was thick with tears. "Oh, sweetheart, what did it cost?" "Everything," I whispered, and the voices in my head screamed louder. "It cost everything." To be continued. This is the first 2 chapters establishing the curse, the family history, and Eleanor's sacrifice. The story would continue with Eleanor's struggle against the madness, a potential twist involving her Aunt Margaret discovering additional information, and ultimately a conclusion where Eleanor finds a way to survive, perhaps by discovering that her willingness to sacrifice herself, unlike Thomas's cowardly bargain, actually fulfills the blood of equal measure requirement differently, or by Margaret finding the missing piece of Thomas's letter that reveals the true way to break the curse. The inspiring message would center on the themes of sacrifice versus selfishness, the courage to face seemingly impossible odds, and how love, Eleanor's for her family, her father's for her, can transcend even supernatural curses. The resolution would involve Eleanor surviving by transforming the nature of the curse itself through her genuine self-sacrifice, rather than the selfish bargain Thomas made, ultimately proving that some patterns can be broken when someone is brave enough to pay a different price than the one demanded.